You want to know the answer to your problems? You just need more discipline, more work ethic. You see this everywhere, like work ethic and discipline is the new hot shit. Any little video, it's like, how do I become more successful? How do I get there? Work ethic. You're not hustling enough. That's the answer to everything. Just hustle. And the question I want to ask you here is, why do you even need discipline in the first place? Why are you not naturally inspired to work? Because what's the assumption behind it? You need to make yourself work. It means that by default, you don't want to work. There's a part of you that just doesn't have to work, and you have to drag that part of you every step of the way, learning discipline and work ethic. It's like there's this enemy inside that is doing whatever it can to just fuck you. You're like, let me get to work. And there's a part of you like, you don't need work. Just slack off. You're like, no. What are the discipline techniques? What are the work ethic techniques? You don't need those. Just slack off. Netflix is right there. And you're like, not the
That's
Netflix.
Exactly what it sounds like.
Netflix. There's a new show called Big Mouth that just came out. You need more Big Mouth. And you're like, no, what's the discipline technique for Big Mouth? The hustle technique. Just watch it. Just watch it. That's how most people go about their days. They're literally with this enemy just yapping about Big Mouth, Netflix. In the background, they're like, nope, head down, hustle. And you think you're accomplishing a lot, but in reality, you know how you can accomplish more? Get rid of that enemy inside. Get rid of the fucking big mouth voice yapping about in the background. And just think of how much you could accomplish without just dragging that ball and chain behind you. The example I love to use to illustrate this is I remember back in school as a kid, there was like an assignment I had as homework for either biology or chemistry in school. And there was that little voice like, screw this, you don't want to do this. And I had to use everything I had in me to just do 10 minutes of homework. However, that same me could spend hours upon hours trying to figure out this music recording program on my computer. It was a program called Pro Tools, and I was so into music that I could spend 12 hours straight just trying to figure it out, messing with it, recording different little riffs and stuff and tweaking it. There'd be problems, and I'd be, how do I fix that? 12 hours straight. It required zero discipline. I didn't have to motivate myself to do it. I was just drawn to it, and it felt effortless. And this is the thing that's really missing in today's hustle world, hustle reality. We all think we're so smart because we're hustling, when in reality there's another lane where it goes much easier. There's that saying, smart work and hard work. A lot of hustlers, yeah, you're working hard, but it's not smart. It's similar to, one of the summer jobs I had growing up was going around on this garbage truck, a summer job. It was actually a great job, well paid, and it was so much hard work. It was the most hard work ever, but you kind of stayed stuck. And this is a common example. It's like, yeah, they stay stuck and they have their excuses. It's like, well, I'm kind of limited to this. There's that ceiling. What's your ceiling as a hustler, as a person with a lot of work ethic and discipline? It's the exact same thing. If you could get rid of using all that effort fighting self-sabotage, just eliminate self-sabotage to begin with, eliminate the little big mouth yap, you would be at that next level. Right now, you're the same as that garbage worker. The hustler is the garbage worker. It's hard work. Yes, it's a lot of work, but it is stupid work.
There's the meme for your Instagram.
Hustler, garbage worker.
Garbage worker. And to be very clear here, both Julie and I want to be very, very frank. Many of our good friends and people who we admire, we love Gary Vaynerchuk. Our boy Max is this incredible worker. And I think that they actually know the things that we're saying. And a little bit, we're kind of picking on the semantics here. So, Brandon Carter, for example, he hammers on discipline. Or is it Jocko Willink? Man. He's like amazing, right? The guy who wrote Extreme Ownership, he's amazing. He talks about discipline. So we love these guys. And we also think that they understand this, at least to whatever degree that they're into this topic. Okay, it's a good first step.
Great first step.
So what we're basically saying is, and I love your analogy here, is the type of the type of interest or engagement that you'd have with something like Pro Tools, where it's fun for you, versus something that's quote work. And we have to begin to understand why the human mind makes one thing so engaging. Why is it so easy and effortless to do one thing and so painful and difficult to do another thing? Now, obviously there's certain practicalities here. I understand that there's going to be certain aspects of what Julien does or what I do where we do have to have that kind of hustle mindset. Stuff that just, honestly, it does suck. No matter what kind of magnet that we have, it does suck. But that should be elements of what your life looks like. That shouldn't be where you live or the default. That should be the exception to the rule, not the default. And going from there, I want you to really pause and think of that feeling of doing something that you're fully engaged in, how effortless it is, how much the time passes with really not that feeling of like, oh, how long is it going to take staring up at the clock, and then compare that to things that you don't like. So I remember as a kid, I would be thinking of doing my homework. And as you know, I'm almost 40 at this point, so anybody who's older would remember shows like Family Ties with Michael J. Fox or Cheers with Ted Danson. And I can remember I'd be sitting there watching Family Ties, and I'd say, okay, I'm going to do my homework right after this is done. Then I'm like, no, I'll watch Cheers. And every single time I'd be shaming myself for not getting to work, and I'd be miserable, and I'd be thinking about it and struggling to do it. And then if I would get to work, say doing math homework or English homework, I would really detest it. And then I would go in the next day to school just dreading not having my homework done. And what bothered me about that getting older was that I grew up feeling like I was stupid, like I was lazy. People were telling me that I was lazy. And then meanwhile, when I finally found some topics that I really liked, I became this hustler guy, right? Everybody thinks I'm hustling now. And funny enough, maybe a little too much information here, but in my final year of high school, that was my breakthrough, because they said that you could study what you want. And so I studied these different topics that I was really, really fascinated by. I would study Homer's Odyssey, the Iliad of Homer. I did studies on things like the World Bank, and I loved those. And I would just read and read and read for many hours. So a big part of it is, again, having that magnet. In my final year of high school, that was the first time that I ever experienced going from the hustler mode to the magnet and being like, wait a minute, maybe I am smart. And when I was finally studying things that I really liked, all of a sudden I was able to get into any school that I wanted in my country. I wound up going to Queen's University. It's kind of like a Harvard of Canada kind of school. And what wound up happening was, now all of a sudden, I'm smart. I went from being viewed as stupid, with learning disabilities, ADD, depression, and just viewed as this complete screw up my entire elementary school, junior high school, proper high school, viewed as this complete learning disabled degenerate. They were thinking of putting me in alternate school, and always, Owen's having a hard time. And suddenly, when the magnet kicked in and I didn't have to use hustle or work ethic, I became the smartest kid in my class, and all this crazy stuff that you see in the videos now, I became that guy. It was this one distinction of the magnet versus the hustle that allowed me to become who I am today. It's the kind of culture that we put into our team and the kind of culture that we want to build here for you.
So really recall those moments where you're fully engaged. You're there, you're present. There's not that little voice in the back of your head trying to sabotage your efforts, how effortless it feels, and how much you actually get done. That's what we want for you in all areas of life. Instead of trying to go at this with the brake on, remove your foot from the brake and remove the glorification of this struggle, okay? Struggle doesn't mean necessarily results. It just means you're struggling. Some other things to consider here is when you're fighting against a ceiling of success or a success barrier. And this is something you have to ask yourself. What is my ceiling of success when it comes to my goals? When it comes to my health, my wealth, my relationships? How much do I deserve to have? And one that I've seen for years in the dating world is whenever someone is talking to a person they believe that they're outside their league or on the same level, things just flow. They don't run out of things to say. You don't get nervous. You're like, hey, we're on the same level. I'm even a little outside their league. Easy peasy. However, as soon as you talk to someone you believe is outside your league, you freeze up. You get extremely stifled, self-conscious, nervous, and you run out of things to say. Now, guess what? Having that ceiling of success, there's a million techniques out there to fight against running out of things to say. And sure, it's better than just not saying anything, but what about just not having that ceiling to begin with and not being stifled to begin with? That's what we're talking about here. You can convince yourself, you know what, I'm hustling, I'm disciplined, I'm using all these techniques to not be nervous and to fight being stuck in my head and to keep talking. Okay, but what about just not having that problem? Another thing to bring your awareness to is the identity you've unconsciously taken on and how this identity limits you. And an example that comes to mind is a client I've been working with who works in the finance world, Wall Street, and he just started in this new firm, and the boss told him, you know what, you have a lot of potential, I've been following you, I love you, and you know what, I really want to move you up the ladder here, I want to get you to the top. You're going to be like one of my top guys. And This person, this client, has taken on an identity unconsciously of being the underdog, of always needing some challenge to overcome, to prove people wrong. So for him, it just can't be easy. He can't just join the firm and do the work and just kill it. He started off by just procrastinating, putting things off until the boss started doubting him. Maybe I picked the wrong guy. I don't know about this. Maybe you're not my number 2. Maybe you can't move up to the top. And now there's someone to prove wrong, and now he's scrambling like crazy to overcome this huge challenge.
Resonates with him now. Resonates with this world of strife, conflict, drama, and chaos, as opposed to a peaceful world. You have to resonate with peace.
It's all hard, massive stress. He's like pulling all-nighters trying to make it happen, as opposed to just doing the work to begin with and having things come easily. So letting go of that identity, now he can just kill it. And that's the question for you. Are you making things a lot harder than they need be? Are you hooked on this stress? Are you fighting against these ceilings of success as opposed to just removing them? And imagine taking all that energy you're spending fighting against this and just proactively moving forward effortlessly.
Keep asking yourself the question, am I making this easy or hard? And what I love you to do as an exercise is to look at friends of yours. A lot of times it's easier to recognize in friends, and ask yourself, is my friend or coworker or significant other making their lives easier or making their lives hard? And once you've done that exercise of just looking at other people and seeing, are they adding to their own drama or strife or conflict, from there you can start to do it to yourself. So even just walking down the street, you can say to yourself, am I making this hard, or can I make this easy? In what ways might I be making this too hard, and how can I make it easier? I mean, funny enough, we're sitting out here, we're shooting, it's freezing out, and really the key to even shooting a video blog in the freeze like this is just non-resistance. You can view it as kind of funny, like, oh, this is kind of cool, we're out in Chicago, it's a bit freezing out, and just sort of enjoy the cold and not resist it, or you can make it really difficult, right? And it's really your choice. So understand that your mind is going to play so many of these tricks on you. And one great trick, if you ever read the book Predictably Irrational, they say that when you have something that's a hobby, when it suddenly becomes a job, you won't want to do it anymore. You lose your motivation for it. So an example that we've seen a lot is that we might have interns who come and work for us for free to help our business because they want to be around us. And they work really, really hard because they're like, I'm passionate about this, I'm giving back, it's really enjoyable, it's fun, it's a hobby, I'm helping out with the team. And then we go to hire them and we start paying them decent money to come and do the exact same job, and suddenly they don't like it anymore because now it's under the guise of work. So notice that a lot of this is actually a misnomer of the mind, where you think that work has to be boring and bad and then leisure is fun and good. An example was the other night, I wound up having to drive home from San Francisco back to Los Angeles, and it occurred to me, because funny enough, I originally had a flight, I missed my flight. So I said to myself, well, even if I were to fly home back to LA, what would I be getting back to? I'd be getting back and I'd have a nice evening relaxing with my friends. Well, if I miss my flight, why can't I do the exact same thing in the car? But what a lot of people would do is on the commute, it's like, okay, the commute has to be miserable. Yeah. The commute sucks, we're driving back. I can't wait to get to the future when it would be fun. I want to get to this better
future.
LA
right now, damn it. If only I made that flight, I'd be in LA right now, and instead I'm in the car.
Doing what? Well, what would I be doing in LA? Joking with my friends, cracking jokes, telling stories, and taking the night off after a hard weekend of work. But you can do that in the car too. Well, in the same way, when you're working, you can also make the choice to joke around and have fun, or talk to your friends, or kind of just pump yourself up and be in a state of gratitude, because ultimately it is of the mind. Now, funny enough, because of the fact that we did have to drive back for 7 hours, I made a more conscious effort to make it fun than I would have if I would have been on the airplane. So I'm like, man, we're locked in here for 7 hours. We got to make this fun. So I was specifically telling a lot of funny stories, cracking jokes to my friends, talking about cool things that we were driving past. I was doing that with more intention because of the fact that I knew that I'm locked in for 7 hours. You'll see the same thing in meditation, where if you go somewhere that's like, oh, good sightseeing, say that you're here in Chicago, oh, it's nice sightseeing. You're kind of waiting for the environment to tickle you, waiting for the environment to provide you with the stimulation. But when you shift into saying, I will control my own emotion, happiness comes from me, I can dictate that, I will make the jokes, I will make it fun. Maybe you're doing meditation, you're saying, I'm going to stay present to the moment. Well, when you're doing that, now you can enjoy it. Now, that simple factor of realizing it's an illusion, the work-play thing is an illusion, you can make it fun. You can even pump your state while you're doing things that are monotonous or a little bit even painful. You can make that choice. Now your perspective changes. Now what Julien is getting at here though, and this goes even a deeper further, and you really, really got to get this, is the level of reality that you're living in. And what happens is that, let's say for example, you're carrying a lot of trauma energy, and then you're stuffing that down. And now all of a sudden what's happening is that you've got to push through that kind of derp state because you're always in this kind of disheveled, discombobulated state from carrying a lot of trauma, and now and then you think, well, maybe if I could reach a certain goal, then I'd be happy. If I got money, then I'd be happy. If I met a significant other, had a good dating life, then I'd be happy. So then you grind through it by pushing down the gas and the brake at the same time, right? The brake is on from the trauma energy that you're carrying, or maybe the bad attitude towards work that you're carrying because you think, oh, you know, it's work, not play. So the brake is on, and then you're like, I'm gonna hustle, baby, jam down that gas. And you're pressing the gas, you're like, nobody pushes down the gas further than me. It's Owen and Julien Blanc pushing down that gas. Whoa, look at us. And you're slamming down the gas. Like, for example, say that we're out here in the cold and we're like, oh, this is terrible, this sucks. And then we're gonna power through it with this like really negative attitude, just grind it out, right? Well, if we choose to perceive this, A, as work, and B, as too cold, and then we grind through it, now we're convinced that we put in some real work and hustle. But the other thing you could do is just say cold is kind of a feeling like hot. It's just another feeling. It's kind of stimulating. Obviously, you get too cold, you gotta run inside for a minute. But for the most part, why does that have to be worse than heat? You know, than a summer day? It's just another fun day of your life. It's just a different flavor of ice cream. It's just a different flavor on the menu. And then from there, if we're viewing this as a hobby to shoot the video, now we can do it. And instead of coming back from this and feeling, oh man, I was shooting all day. All day I was working. Oh, we could say that was fun today, and then even go do something that's specifically fun, like a movie, and then watch a movie. But why does watching a movie have to be more fun than this, just because that counts as leisure, and then this counts as work? And likewise, if we've moved out a lot of, say, the trauma energy or things that are holding us back internally, we can now resonate with an environment of success. Because that's the craziest thing. When you have a success barrier and you're pushing into something that would help you, you've got all this internal resistance to what you're doing. That's what we were talking about earlier. Like, you know, you're watching television. Well, when you watch TV, your life's gonna probably not work out very well when you're watching too much television. But when you actually do your homework, that's gonna move you up. And when you don't resonate with that, you've got to trick yourself, pushing yourself into something that you do resonate with. So you're noticing just different factors here. One is, like we said, the labeling in your mind of what it is that you're doing. Making the decision to enjoy it so there's not resistance around the activity. From there, getting rid of internal, deep things like trauma and success barriers that are making it where you don't even resonate with getting the result. And now all of a sudden, if you're resonating with success, you resonate with a better life, and you can exist in that reality. You're a vibrational match to it. And then in addition to that, you're also viewing the process as enjoyable. Well, of course you're gonna have a magnet. Of course it's gonna be a lot easier. Of course you're not gonna run out of gas. Of course you're gonna get energized by the productive work that you're doing. And now all of a sudden, the people who you're competing with in the world, the big world of competition, okay? What other people call competition, you're not even in competition because you're just doing it for the joy of the dance. And while those people look at you and marvel at your unlimited energy, how does this person have so much energy? Wow, they're really hustling. They're disciplined. And you're just like, this is kind of fun. Yeah. They can't even keep up. And then they're pounding their head against the wall, wondering how you're doing it. So again, what we're trying to hammer you with here is not just work ethic, although we love friends of ours who preach hustle, preach work ethic, preach discipline, and many of them are doing the same thing. We're just focusing on it from a different angle. Many of them are actually doing the same thing. They're just calling it hustle. It's really, we're just kind of nitpicking the words here. These are our boys. But just understand that from your own interpretation, how you might have been taking this, we want to add these elements of the way you're labeling it, the happiness and joy that you bring into it, and getting rid of internal success barriers and trauma so that instead of having to hustle, you build the magnet.
So really examine that core belief you have around work. You know, work equals hard, work equals a lot of effort and discipline, and let go of that. And be careful of the conditioning too. You know, if you go on Instagram and you search #hustle or even #discipline, #work ethic, what do you see? You think you fell on the #depression thread. Like everyone's just like, ugh, how miserable can I look? Like hustling, like a tear, like, hustling.
You should actually do that too. Joe Rogan, in his latest comedy special, recommends to do a search for vegan cat. So do vegan cat and then do hustle and grind and see if they have any similarities.
Literally, you're going to scroll through all these pictures of people just like more miserable than the next. Okay, so change that. Work equals fun. Work equals easy. Success comes easy. It doesn't have to be so hard. And letting go, as you mentioned, of past trauma helps tremendously, because if you're stuck coping with yourself, again, trying to stuff that down and make it, you're spending way too much energy coping as opposed to starting from this solid baseline and just thriving. And people misinterpret it too. If you look at someone like Gary Vee, you know, this guy's smiling. He's probably killing it. He doesn't look all miserable all the time, so we tend to misinterpret it.
He's locked in, but he's loving what he's doing.
And that's the thing. It's like, are you loving what you're doing, or did you perhaps misinterpret hustle as feeling miserable? And then also question the advice you're looking up. Are you truly learning success tips, or are you learning how to fight self-sabotage tips? And that's so much of the tools. It's like, this is how you stop being pulled back. This is how you fight self-sabotage, as opposed to let go of self-sabotage and kill it. Stop fighting self-sabotage, get rid of it. And even in terms of letting go, another thing that may be holding you back is perhaps guilt. You know, we all have this guilt over something you did, something you didn't do. And a part of you might be hanging on to this and doesn't want you to succeed, because if you succeed now, you're not getting the justice you deserve. So realize that when it comes to self-sabotage, it's never you proactively screwing yourself over. It's a part of you that's getting exactly what it wants, and your job is to identify what that part is and release it. Whether it's guilt, whether it's staying congruent to the identity you've unconsciously taken on, you must dive into this. This is not just sit at home and slack off. This is what allows you to truly thrive. Remember, hard work doesn't necessarily mean smart work. It doesn't mean success. Oftentimes, it's an excuse and you just remain stuck.
So a lot of the time you think that going directly at something is the solution, right? And it's a very small-minded way of thinking, where it's like, okay, I want to get to that goal. How do you get there? Hustle it out, obviously. Grind it out. And that's very appealing to sort of this tough guy psychology where, you know, you're just going to go right at it, grind it out. Well, end of the day, let's say that you're in a war. Do you want to be like the little infantryman, kind of like shooting his pistol, like bam, 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 right? Or do you want to be the person strategically making, you know, bombs that you're shooting at something and airplanes that are going at something? What do you think is going to be more effective? Who's going to win that war? So you've got to ask yourself.
I love how you compare it to a war and killing people.
That's true.
What will kill more people?
What will kill the most? So if you would like to kill it, so to speak, then you've got to say to yourself, well, how do I go at this in a more strategic manner? And sometimes that means you have to pause and do things that you wouldn't normally do. Maybe ask yourself, how does my food intake affect my ability to lock in and focus? How might meditation affect my ability to lock in and focus? How do my peer groups or my significant other energize me or deplete me? Have I, quote, found my why? And do I have a compelling reason to do what I'm doing? Julien, a major emphasis that he's trying to hammer with you is letting go of trauma energy. Or do you have this ongoing trauma energy that you're stuffing and it's hard for you to even lock in or focus, and then you're just grinding it out, trying to lock in and focus, again, pressing down the gas and the brake at the same time. So really what you want to do is that consider that sometimes the fastest way from point A to point B is to take a pause for a minute, look at the overall systems. Maybe you're in a race car, but there's parachutes holding you back. You've got to cut off the things that aren't aerodynamic and make it that you have a very, very sleek and fast car.
Another core belief we tend to have around work is that the quantity of work trumps the quality of work. You know, we think that, hey, just because I'm working all these hours, I'm getting more results, I'm getting more stuff done, but that's not the case. You'll see people like not sleep. It's like, I'm just gonna work, 20-hour days. Who needs sleep? Another 20-hour day, another 20-hour day. And they're just like, scrambling around, going around in circles, not getting so much done, and they just think they're hustling. They look at themselves in the mirror like, another one for the gram. Yeah, no sleep. And they think that when they relax, when they sleep, when they do things to recuperate, they're wasting time. But again, it's about the quality, not the quantity.
Yeah, in my own case, in my 20s, it was a very, very powerful experience to learn how to work without sleep. Now, to put in context, for guys like myself, for guys like Julien, to work at a 16-hour-a-day clip, or even to spend days at a time not sleeping to work, that's something that we have the ability to do, because there were periods where we were in that lifestyle. And
there might be sprints here and there where you have to.
Yeah, say that you have a product launch, you're on a deadline. Let's say that I'm away from my children and I want to get a lot done so I can get back to see my kids, things like that. that's great. But it's cool to have that ability and to cultivate it in your 20s when if you run down your health a little bit, it's not necessarily going to give you cancer. But if you keep acting like that in your 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, you'll probably give yourself cancer or a heart attack. So it's cool to have the ability to do it and know that you're not doing it by choice. I think that we're at a point where we have to almost consciously choose to shut it down because it's actually easy to go overboard. But that being the case, what do we do when we shut it down? And that's something that we call active recovery. What is active recovery? Well, most people make this false distinction that we talked about earlier where they think there's fun time and there's work time. The fun time is the good time and the work time kind of sucks, is what we tend to think. But what you can kind of do instead is think of it more what in Eastern philosophy we call yin and yang. So the yang is like the explosion, and the yin is like the recuperation time. That's when your nervous system and your body's faculties are able to catch up. Most people ignore the yin, and what happens, they get sick. Their body needs them to get sick. Getting sick is the body's way of saying, like, sit down, idiot. Hey, idiot, sit down. No more yang for you. You're not a good owner of the body. Nya, nya, nya. Now you gotta sit down. We're gonna make you feel terrible to make you sit down. That's why, by the way, a great tip for not getting sick is that if you feel yourself getting run down, stop. So the way that you want to think of it is that most people, they're working doing this thing that they hate in service of having their off time to go have fun. And then when they go have fun, it's usually something like television or getting drunk is what we see a lot of in our society. Instead, what you want to do is you want to think of it where the yin, which is your relaxation time, is a time to really shut it down in terms of active recovery. And then that active recovery is meant to recharge you in service of the yang, which is the explosion of work. So when you love what you do, super passionate about it, then maybe you go do something where you shut down your nervous system, like say a sauna, or maybe you go to cryotherapy, such as our permanent state of cryotherapy that we're sitting here in Chicago right now.
So warm, so warm.
Or maybe you go just do anything, get into the outdoors, do anything to actively recover. Learn what active recovery is. Things like turmeric shots, ginger shots, medicinal mushrooms, meditation to shut down your system, going to the sauna, cold plunge. Some people do yoga.
It's even, I think,
social activities.
Proven, by the way, that 20 minutes of meditation will recharge you much more than just an hour of television.
Yeah, I would say that even that hour of television, if you're watching like a kick-ass show like Game of Thrones, it'd be nice to say to yourself that watching Game of Thrones and a bunch of people getting murdered in Game of Thrones is relaxing, but it's probably actually keeping you in a yang state because it's so anxiety-provoking. Even oftentimes going to see a movie, you say it's a time to recharge.
Yeah, like
it's actually a yang activity. So think within yin and yang. Yin, that's the recharge. Yang is the explosion. And you've got to get really good at just calming down your system. And what that does, it gives you really superior energy so that when you have the explosion, you could do incredible quality of work. So whenever you see, for example, public speakers, they've got to be good at having the explosion, maybe in front of a camera, in front of a crowd, but they've also got to be good at doing really powerful active recovery in between that time. That being the case, when you're really, really good at active recovery, now your work is effective. And if you're not good at doing active recovery, what's going to happen to you alternately is that you're going to always be in this depleted state and then always having to work harder and harder, basically smashing the gas down on a car that is broken. That being the case, it's about quality, not quantity. And what you want to do is aim to increase your quantity only insofar as you can maintain the quality of your work. The exception to that is maybe on some kind of a deadline. You want the ability to keep going. You will at times, but you don't want that to be where you live.
So to wrap up, one last thing that I'd ask you to reflect on here is how much of your life is spent working. You know, if you just break down your week, how many hours are you working? Break down your month, your year, literally your life. You're spending most of your time working. So if you're stuck in this grind of work ethic and discipline, spinning your wheels, quantity of work, and just stuck in misery, not only will you not be getting the results you could be getting much easier, much faster, in a more effortless way, but you're also spending most of your life in misery.
Yeah,
and is it worth
that.
it?
Quantify how much your life will be spent in misery if you're not on top of this.
Like literally, is that what life is supposed to be? Just stuck in misery?
Yeah, the more miserable I am, the more I hustle.
Proud of that? Are you proud of being in misery, living a miserable life? Is that really what life is? Something to reflect on.
Yeah, and I'd say you can tell yourself that a certain result is worth it. And if that's the case, and it is for you, that's amazing. I commend you. But I do want you to be honest with yourself and really audit whether or not it is. I guess what I would wrap with also is that you have to vibrate. You have to be a vibrational match internally to the external life that you want. And oftentimes, if you look at somebody's external life, it is almost a perfect match of what's going on inside them. And I'd say there's many exceptions to that. I wouldn't get caught up in it. But I would ask you to like look at your room, look at your life, look at how things are going for you. It's often a match to what's going on within. And
Your room a mess, you messy little kid.
I mean, bottom line is that if you took a crackhead off the street out here and you bring him in a mansion, he's probably still going to be running off to the bathroom to do crack and complain about his victim problems, right? Because he doesn't resonate with those surroundings yet. So you've got to get it where you're always letting go of trauma, increasing your vibration, what you resonate with, and then from there taking action, which of course, like a magnet, when you resonate with that amazing result, the magnet is going to pull you towards it. And when you consider all these different factors that we talked about in this chilly Chicago evening video, I think that what you'll find is that you can get past the hustle and build the work magnet. Not just work ethic, the work magnet. And we'll leave you with that. We'll see you soon.
This is Julien, and welcome to Transformation Mastery.
It was fucking amazing.
This was huge for me. This was so important.
This gave me by far the greatest epiphanies I've ever had.
And we got like real deep, and I found some issues within myself.
One of the best things I've seen so far in my life.
What you're about to experience going through this program is what completely changed my life on every single level. Okay, be it health, wealth, relationships, higher purpose, you name it. This is the stuff that finally produced that true, long-lasting personal transformation we're all after.